presume where you are up to now is that you just made a Bayrei Ma'irei Ha'esh. Right over here, people are anxiously awaiting being able to sit on chairs, which should be in another couple of minutes. So if you are wondering when it is going to be Chatzos in Australia, I presume you're going to hear the commotion. But hopefully, the commotion that you're going to be hearing will be the commotion of Mekabetz, the Mekabetz Nitchei Am Yisrael, of Yiddish Kinder getting together. A couple of minutes ago, you heard a Bayrei Ma'irei Ha'esh, which is the only really thing that is left for Havdalah. Tonight, or tomorrow night, depending on where you are, you're going to hear the rest of Havdalah, but you're not going to hear the Bayrei Minei Psamim. We lose the Bayrei Minei Psamim. Of course, you can make as many Bayrei Minei Psamim as you want, but we lose the Bayrei Minei Psamim on a Matzai Shabbos that feeds into Tisha B'Av. Why? Well, first of all, why the Bayrei Ma'irei Ha'esh? Adam Arishain sins from the Yetz Hadas right before Shabbos. The Gemara says if he waited just a little bit, it would have been mutter to him. As is the case with all Aveiros. If you wait just a little bit, if you wait for HaKadosh Baruch Hu's timetable, not only do you have the Hana, anyway you get paid for it, but if you insist on having it when you want to have it, not only does it get used up very quickly, but you have to pay a price for it. Adam Rishon is thrown out of Gan Eden on Matzai Shabbos. Hashem did not want to throw him out on Shabbos. Matzah Shabbos, for the first time in his life, Adam Rishon sees darkness. Not only does he see darkness, he sees Galus. He sees Tisha B'Av. He sees pain. He sees the blood dripping down from 9/11. He sees the blood of terrorist attacks. He sees the little boys in Crocodile Island that the Spanish king sent them off where they died of starvation. He sees all the pain of Yidden and Galus. He sees as people sit on the floor, imagine what it was like, a whole family sitting in a bunker, freezing and hungry, no air, nothing to eat. It's difficult if you have nothing to eat. My good friends across the Pacific, you're not too long after Shalosh Sudas. Over here, we're a couple of hours, but we're already anticipating the Zman. You can be hungry from today to tomorrow, but you have Pas B'Salai in 26 hours, 25, 24, 23, you have what to eat. Imagine what it's like if it's dark, and you're sitting on the floor in a bunker, and there's no food for today, and there's no food for tomorrow. And every time you hear the thud, thud, thud of boots, you wonder, is this the last time? I've told you often the story my mother, Allah Shalom, told me. They dug a bunker underneath their dining room table. My grandfather, my uncle, aunt, grandmother went down into the bunker. Someone had to remain on top to close the bunker, to roll the carpet over, push the table over, and then to hide when the Germans came. And my mother, Aleh Shalom, she was physically the smallest, so she got the job. Whenever the Germans came around, they quickly ran down into the bunker. She closed it, covered it with the carpet, climbed up on top of one of the pieces of furniture. And downstairs in the bunker, we sat on the floor, and time lasted forever. And the food was depleted. And my mother told her that my grandmother, Vita, went out to look for food. Don't go, they pleaded with her. Don't go, you may not come back. She said, if we stay here, we starve to death. If I go, I may come back. I have to do what I have to do. She went. She never came back. As hard as it is to lose a parent, Rahman al-Islam, you know what it means? You say goodbye to someone and you never see that person again. And you can only allow for your imagination try to determine whatever happened to that person. What's it like when you try to envision a parent? The last time you see the face of that parent is leaving a bunker and disappearing onto the streets, never ever to come back. And one day when the Germans came, once again everyone ran into the bunker, and Mother Allah Shalom rolled the carpet over on top, pushed the table, jumped up behind a piece of furniture. The SS officers came in, this time with a stick, and they began to bang and bang and bang to look for a hollow sound. When they heard the hollow sound, they went down to the bunker and dragged everyone out. And my mother, Aleh Shalom, who risked her life for her parents, remained behind that piece of furniture. She would live to survive, but she had to watch from between the creaks as her father is being led away. Adam HaRishon sees all of this Matzai Shabbos, and he has to live with the guilt. I brought this to the world. Ich habe das herumgebracht auf der Welt mit meinem Chet. And Adam HaRishon wants to give up. Instead, HaKadosh Baruch Hu puts him to the das of Adam HaRishon. He takes 2 pieces of wood and he rubs it together in a flame. It's a flame that pales in comparison to the flame of the Aragonis that he had for 36 hours. A while ago, he had a whole different kind of a light. He had the light of the Aragonis in Gan Eden. You flip the switch, and it's a light where there's no pain, no tsaris, no confusion, the answers to all of your questions. You feel as if you just swallowed 6 bottles of vodka without the stomach ache. You're great, you're simcha, you can drive, you can do everything, you're das, you see the world, you're so happy. And all of a sudden that light is extinguished. And this is what I have to replace it? Rubbing 2 sticks together and it's a light? Adam HaRishon could have just lashed out that light and say, I give up. And there would not be a world. Instead, Adam HaRishon says, this is the light that I have, and if this is the light that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives me now to face the darkness, I will deal with it. And that is why even on the Mitzvah Tisha B'Av, you make a Boirei Ma'orei Ha'esh. As my friends in America are still digesting the strawberry and cream in Shalashudas, my friends here in Australia are dreaming about the ones tonight. Remember, Chazal referred to this as a Suda Shloima V'Shachter. Whereas normally by a Suda Hamavsekes, it is limited how much you're allowed to eat. But if it's Shalashudas coming into Shabbos, Kal V'Chomer this year, that it's a Tisha B'Av coming into a Nitcha, you can eat even Suda Shloima. Why Shloima HaMelech? Shloima HaMelech had everything in the world. Snap, the birds came flying. It was all his. He controlled the Chayes and the Eifais. The lions and the tigers had to bow down to his command. Shloima HaMelech could have done anything in the world to relax and enjoy life. Instead, he went out and married 1,000 princesses. That meant more than the fact that it was very noisy in his palace. It meant that Shloima HaMelech saw there's going to be a galus. When he built the first Beis HaMikdash, he saw there was going to be a galus. It wasn't going to last forever, and he dug the tunnel, the subterranean tunnels underneath to put down the Aron and put down the Menorah. And he gave up his Ruchnias and his Gashmias. He knew he was being over in Aveira about Layarba Noshim and paid a price for it. But maybe if he marries the princesses from all the nations, and it'll be a Molo Aretz as Hashem Deya. It won't be necessary to have a galus. He took the chance. And the night of the Beis HaMikdash, the very night the Beis HaMikdash was supposed to be built, he married Bas Parah. He couldn't get another date from the caterer. It had to be that night. Because Shlomo was trying that somehow he breaks the strongest klip and he marries Bas Parah, that the Beis HaMikdash will last forever. Shlomo atzacharain geton in the parsha of Galus, and he paid an unbelievable price for it. And in the morning, when it was time to open up the Beis HaMikdash, Bas Parah went and drew a drape around the bed where it looked like stars. You can still sleep. It's not morning yet. They couldn't wake the king. Everyone's waiting with the Beis HaMikdash. He had the keys under his pillow. So Bathsheba, his mother, comes knocking and says, Shloim Alech, they gave him zwei petch. What's going on over here? And indeed the Medrash says she did give him petch, by the way. Shloim HaMelech accepts it. In his attempt to try to avoid Galus, Bas Parah wants to paint a picture of the night. And Shloim HaMelech knew this was going to happen. And he continues to try to paint a picture of the day. And that's what it means that on this Shalashudas you eat even a Suda Shloima V'Shatai. Shloima who knew there's going to be tzaris. Shloima who knew Tisha B'Av is around the corner, did everything within his power to try to bring the Geula with tremendous Mesiras Nefesh. I was in a prison many years ago to visit somebody. And there was a young man over there, a young man that was sentenced, Rahman al-Islam, for 10 years. 10 very long years. And it was the first time that his wife and child came to visit. Very, very first time. And the little boy was never told, Tatte's in a koilel. He looked around. His father's wearing a funny orange suit. It does not look like a koilel. And as the little child awaits chatzos, right now it is chatzos in Australia, as we see everyone getting off their seats, about to sit down. Just remember, you will be doing this tomorrow morning. And hopefully, nafla v'laisaisev kum. Bez Hashem Yisbarach, the next time we get up, it should be that we should never have to sit down. No personal availus, no rabbim in availus. So this boy comes and he sees his father in an orange jumpsuit. And he doesn't look like Kyle Yingalite, around and around. And the little boy begins to cry, and the mother begins to cry, and she says, Sheifel, it's all right, it's all right. And the father bites his lips and holds back his tears and says, no, it's okay, Sheifel, I'm learning here in a koilel. Little kid looks around. And finally, somebody comes along and says, it's time to get up, it's chatzos, you have to leave. Visiting hours are over. And the little boy runs over to his father and grabs his hands. And he says, Tatte, ich verstehe, du bist in a koilel. Aber Tatte, come on. I know you're in a koilel. But please, Tatte, come home. I saw this, my eyes swelled up. And I turned around, they shouldn't see me cry. And the mother was crying. And the father was crying. And he later told me that all the years that he suffered until that point, paled in comparison to this moment. To this moment when the child said, Tatte kim ahaim. If only we said that to the Rabbi Shalom properly, Tatte kim ahaim, then maybe this will be the last time we have to get up from the floor. Just maybe. I heard a story from a Yid. It happened to him. He told me the story. He said that before the war, he was unbelievably close with his father. He ran off into the woods. They stole berries. They stole food from peasants. They tried to survive. Together they were so close to each other. Like anything. And then the father took sick in the woods. He caught pneumonia and he was dying. No doctors, no antibiotics, just a freezing winter, European winter. And right before his father died, his crying son leaned over to his father, and his father told him his last words. He said to him, Fischel, I want you to be loyal in Torah and mitzvahs. Yes, Father. And if you don't, I'm going to come back to get you. And with those words, his father passed away. Fischel was shocked. His father never ever spoke to him that way. These were his last words. This was his goodbye. Fischel told me he went through the war. He went through Shiva Medira Gehenna, Auschwitz, Birkenau, what he went through. Can't imagine. He said after the war in the DP camp, he was angry. He was angry at the Rabbi Shalom. He was angry at his father. He was angry at everybody. Closing Megarav Zecher Tzadik Levracha wrapped a white shmata around his head. Streimer. And they took one of the frum soldiers and he gave his helmet and they kashered it and cooked whatever they can come up with in terms of a chont. And the Rebbe was serving it. And Fischel came by. And he said, I'm going to give it to that Rebbe. He said, I'm going to walk in front of his face Friday night. I'm going to light the cigarette. And I am going to blow the smoke into his face. That is what I am going to do. And let the Rebbe tell him one word. Let the Rebbe tell him one word. He went over, got the cigarette ready Friday night. He lit it. Let the Rebbe call him a shaygitz, and I'm going to give it to that Rebbe. And I'm going to tell him what I think. And all of the pain that was biting into him all this while is cooking up within him. And it's getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And he walks over to him right there and then. He comes to the tish and he's sitting in front and he's wearing no yarmulke and he's throwing his hair back and forth. He wanted to get the comment from the Rebbe. The Rebbe's al-Marifan Ashayget Sarusha and he's going to let him have it. But the Rebbe wasn't biting. Okay, plan B. He's going to take out the cigarette and blow the smoke into the Rebbe's mouth. He takes out the cigarette and he's about to light the match. And the Rebbe looks at him and he's waiting. So the Rebbe mich narifan Ashayget. Let him call me Ashayget. And the Rebbe smiled. And the Rebbe said, Heshala, as nicht moide von dein Tatte? You're not scared of your father? He told me the cigarette fell from his mouth and he looked down and he was never, ever, ever Mechal Shabbos again. His father had to have a certain degree of ahava, a certain degree of love. They had to have a certain commitment to each other for that statement to be able to work. For his father to be able to reach down from the Shemei HaShemayim further than just being on two sides of the Pacific Ocean. And to be able to say, don't do it. Don't do it. Someone told me a story. They were on the train to Auschwitz. And a little girl lost her shichala. And the mother was saying, she was crying, Chanish Mazichala, Chanish Mazichala, I don't have my little shoe, I don't have my little shoe, as if that was a problem. As if she didn't know that in a half hour from then she'll be burning in a gas chamber. And the mother kept saying, someone please, can someone please, can I help me treffen the shichala? Can someone please help me find her shichala? Someone told me that was on this train that she couldn't look at a pair of shoes for years and years and years. She said it would be 5 years until she will once again hear a pair of shoes referred to as a shichala. Not just a shoe, but as a little loving sign of growth of a child. And every time she would see a shichala, her stomach dropped and she revisioned what was going on then. In a way, it was her last shichala. A year told me a story, all these stories first time, that he was a chaplain, that's a kind of a rabbi, I don't know how you say chaplain in Australian, but he was a chaplain in a nursing home. Not stam a nursing home, it's a military kind of a nursing home. And there was an old man, a yidala there. So he went over to this yid and said, maybe you want to put on tefillin? And he said, never, kamonish. Whoa. And every once in a while he tried it again and he got the same reaction. Finally he said to him, I'm not asking you to put on tefillin, but tell me, why are you so in shock? What's the big... So he said that he was together with his father on the line when they got off the trains going to Auschwitz. And his father was clutching his tefillin. And they told his father, drop it. He said, no. Drop it. He said, no. And the German grabbed it away and he ran for it and began to pull his tefillin and his father was shot dead right there and then. Don't tell me about tefillin. Maybe if you put on tefillin, you'll connect to your father. I said, don't talk to me about tefillin. He didn't say a word to him. 6 months later, he doesn't know. I woke up in the morning, I said, you know what, I'm going to try. And he sat down next to him and he said, your father gave up his life for tefillin. Maybe he's looking down at you and he wants you to put on tefillin. Something touched him. And he rolled up his sleeve. And he put the tefillin on his arm. And he put the tefillin on the person's head. And the man began to cry like a little baby. And he held on to the tefillin. And he kept saying again and again, Tatte, 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 Father, I love you. And he kissed the tefillin 1,000 times over. So that night, the person passed away. He said it was his birthday. That's why he put on the tefillin. Do we know the connection that goes on, Shemayim to down here? Yirmiyahu HaNavi took out the words of the Keilah Gadol HaGibra V'Anoira. How could you say Gibra V'Anoira? All around I see people dying, little children laying dead on the floor. This is Gibra V'Anoira. Yirmiyahu HaNavi took it out. The Anshe Knesses HaGdoila came back and they were Machzir Torah L'Yoshna. They returned the crown to its previous glory. They instituted now a Shemon Esrei HaGadol HaGibra V'Anoira. I, the Kasha, where's the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu if Jews are dying? And the answer is Heinein V'Roisav Heinein Eroisav. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu does what he has to do. No, Yirmiyah Hanavi didn't know this, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu does what he has to do? Only the Anshe Knesset Agdoyle that I heard from my Meshgiach so sein gesinnt. Yirmiyah Hanavi is Torah Shebiksav. Torah Shebiksav is the words of the Rabbi Shalom. If, let's say, a father is a tremendous heart surgeon, and he's walking, and the son falls to the floor, and his heart is not beating, there's no defibrillator, there's nothing to do, and the father does something which is impossible to imagine. He takes a knife, cuts open the son's chest, puts his hand in, and starts beating, squashing the heart, beating, and the son comes alive, and the blood and the kishkas are all over the place. The father can't look, and finally they take over. And when they come to the father, they say, wow, how did you do that? The father says, I don't want to talk about it. How did you cut up your own son? You heard? I don't want to talk about it. The father becomes so sick and so hurt. But when the child wakes up, and they tell the child, you're only alive because your father is such an amazing surgeon. He was able to put in his hands, he was able to do that. So the son goes around saying, man, Tatte, my father's the best doctor in the world. The Churban Abayas, the Gullus had to be done. The chest had to be cut open and the heart had to be pumped. But Yirmiyah HaNavi is the Navi, it's the words of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Rabbi Shalom says, I have to do that to my own children. I don't want to talk about it. Take out the words, Agibra V'Anoira. But the Anshe Knesset Agdoyle, they do talk about it. The Anshe Knesset Agdoyle, they look up at their father and they say, only my father could have done such a thing and saved my life. Of Shofach Chamasai al Eitzim V'Avonim. The Anshe Knesset Agdoyle started a process that we have to continue. Tatte, Kimahayim. I want to tell you something. Every single person that is sitting over here in this hall, whether you're on this side of the globe or on the other side of the globe, every person sitting in the Beis HaMedrash, if you are fasting today on Tisha B'Av, if you sat on the floor for 1 minute, if you have your tefillah now that's ready for mincha, and if you're a balabusta ready thinking what I can cook for tonight, and who I can invite, why are you here? There's 6 million Yidden on the world, 7, 8 million. How many of them know that there's a Rabbi Shalom on the world? Know that there's a Tisha B'Av? Know that there's a Torah and mitzvahs? Are thinking about a Beis HaMikdash? Do you know that there are statistics that if you are to cheshbon out how many Yidden there are al pi halacha, that means bas of a Yid, there are studies that show that there are 70 million Yidden on the world, that Eliyahu Navi is going to have to be mavayir, that al pi halacha they're Yidden. How come you're here and you know about a Rabbi Shalom and a Torah? You're a miyat miyuta. You know why? Because you had a father, you had a mother, you had a Zayda, you had a Baba, you had a Elta Zayda, Elta Baba. It may have been 10 generations back, 20 generations back, 30, 40, 50, or 100 generations back that had some act of Mesiras Nefesh. And that's why you are who you are. When you say Tatte Kimahain, you're talking to the Kadosh Baruch Hu. You're also talking about to your own Zaydas. This year, I had to attend one of the most heart-rendering levayas I was ever by. A 9-year-old boy that passed away after being sick for 5 years. And the whole family was involved, amongst many, many other people. Trying to be mechazik, trying to be help out at home, going and sleeping with the child in the hospital, year after year after year. It's getting better and better and better and boom, better and better and boom. And now it's the child's levaya. And there are drushas, and there are magidim, and there are speakers. And then the father opens up the door, and he looks at the arayin of his little child. And he wants to talk, and no words are coming out of his mouth. And you hear the cry of the people. And he just says one thing. Says to the little boy, Chesky, vergessen's nicht. You're going up to Shemayim, don't forget us. Please, don't forget us. And that was his levaya. You think you don't have fathers up there in Shemayim? Babas up there that aren't saying to you down here on this world, don't forget me? If you are here now, I guarantee you had a father and mother that was crying. Very interesting. I knew very, very little, still know very, very little about my father's family. My father, Zecher Tzadik Levracha, left his home, was born in a little town called Sokolov, and he moved to Lemberg. I knew he ran away to learn in yeshivas, and from there he was in Shanghai. And he spoke very little about his family. I didn't even know the names of my uncles and aunts. Maybe he told me once or twice, but somehow it didn't register. And you would think, at this point of the game, my father was nifter 20 years ago, so what shaykhs do I have with my Zayda? There's one picture of him in the house. There was one last postcard that he sent to my father, Gam Baruch Yeh, hopefully you got away alive. I would have no shaykhs with that. And if you were to tell me that the Mesavev Kol Hasibais, that the Rabbi Shalom, who arranges Hashgacha in a way that we can't understand it, if you were to tell me the Bayrei Kalalamim will lead me to find out more information, I would say anything is possible. Last Pesach, Yossi Frama called me and gave me the invitation to come to Australia. And let me tell you, I gave him a very hard time. He answered the call, didn't answer the call, but he was persevered and did it. And that still wouldn't have helped if not for some very, very close people to me in America that pushed me to go and literally took care of everything for me. Moshe Seifer and many others. Imamish, Lazam Zacharanga, like the link in the bride. It was as if in a Shemayim, I said no, and they picked me up and said, we're not asking you. Bye. Goodbye. That way is San Francisco. And I'm sitting on the plane, and I'm saying to myself, this is so not me to pick myself up and travel to the other side of the world for a week and leave my kids. It's not, I think twice about going to New Jersey. New Jersey is a state in America. I think it's twice about going there. We felt it on. You know, how did I want? It's epis. Epis to a bunch of people. I got a signal in the Shemayim. Push him, do it. Was it worth coming? Yes. To see this Chashav at Tzibur, to see what goes on over here, to feel Klal Yisrael all over the globe 100%. But besides for that, let me tell you something. That a couple of days before I came, I got an email. I don't have a computer in my house. It came at the yeshiva. Somebody told me I got an email from a cousin of mine that lives in Melbourne. Cousin that lives in Melbourne. Began to think and think. Yes. I had a cousin that my father once said. I remember the Tatte that once came for Shabbos. Begirsa the Yankis as a little kid I came. And this cousin lives a couple of blocks away from here. I went there Friday, me with my wife, a wonderful person. And let me tell you what I found out, that I never ever knew. I found out that my father was one of 5 children. I didn't remember, because my father never spoke about it. I still was uncomfortable to speak to him about his family, so I never spoke about it. I'm saying these names because these were names, I don't know if any survivors, anyone mentioned their name. An aunt by the name of Chana Rachel. An uncle by the name of Moshe. An aunt by the name of Reisel and Freida. I remember them, and she describes them. And I'm sitting here, and I'm saying that Rabbi Shalom wanted me to hear this. This is my father's brothers and sisters. I can almost see their face, got the one picture we have. And she's describing their personalities. And she goes on to, now my father had told me that even when he was in yeshiva, he smuggled himself to go back home. But he never gave me details. Never gave me details. And she told me the story. My father, Zechreinu Levracha, learned in Lemberg. Lemberg was territory of Belz. And he went to the Belzerov Tish, and he had married the Kana, even smuggled the border to go to the Belzerov Tish. But he had a cheshik to learn Litvish yeshivas. Now, if you understand what it was like then, okay, for a Chassidish Shabbat in Lemberg to say he wants to learn a Litvish yeshiva, that's like somebody from America saying he wants to go to Australia, without planes and without boats, swimming on a tube. It's like going to the moon. And he went. And his father was so upset. Where are you going? Refused to give him any food. He said he got onto the train. His mother threw food into the window. And the war broke out. And everybody in Poland was doomed and finished. And he was in Vilna. And in Vilna, you know, if I don't want to get into the story now, but how the yeshivas were saved through Japan, going to Japan, and that's the story on its own. But this part I did not know. That before my father was about to get onto the plane, boat, train, whatever it was, to go to Japan through Russia and to leave, he went back home to Poland. say goodbye to his parents. And by then they were hiding someplace. And he met them. And that the Zayda said, I never understood why you wanted to go. Now I see there was a hashgacha gan baruch here. And as he turned around to run back, if he could still get back, imagine what this meant, to go back to say goodbye. Said to his brother Moshe, come, let's go. Come with me. And Moshe said, I can't leave my parents. And my father felt bad and said that maybe I should stay as well. And the two of them looked at each other and said, let there be dairis from this family. You go and I'll stay. Never heard this story before, but I heard it now. Tell me, was this not a hashgacha that the Rebbeinu Shalom should pluck me up from one side of the globe and take me to the other side of the globe, that I should hear these words? That she told me be'erach when his yard site is this Moshe, that I should say a Kaddish and learn a Mishnah? I never knew he existed. The Rebbeinu Shalom puts us where we're supposed to be in Golus. We don't necessarily understand where we are. And we're not 1 meter further, 1 meter. I want to tell you a sense that I had when I came here to Australia. I got off the plane, I looked around, I hear people speaking English funny. I know you think I'm speaking English funny. And I'm saying, "Was hat mir das ausgefällt? Where am I?" And I'm on the streets, very nice, and it's amazing. And I walked into this base medrash, and let me tell you the feeling that I had. I walked into this base medrash. I said, it's medrash, mincha. And I could tell you, I davened mincha, a little bit from the flight, and I said to myself, I didn't think for 1 minute while I was davening mincha that I'm on the other side of the globe. I'm not on the other side of the globe, I'm in a Spanish. With people that aren't in a Spanish. And I said to myself, wait a second, you know what that means? That means that there's two dinim. There's a din in geography, where you are, and there's a din that you're in the Besmedrash. And if you're in a Besmedrash and a Meisid and a Yeshiva, it doesn't make a difference if you're in Australia. It doesn't make a difference if you're in New York. It doesn't make a difference if you're in Hong Kong. It doesn't make a difference where you are. It's all one chefz of a Besmedrash. It all comes from Yerushalayim and is going back to Yerushalayim. And the idea of Mekambetz Nitchei Amei Yisrael, that one day the Rebbeinu Shalom is going to take everyone and bring them to Eretz Yisrael, it took on a whole different meaning. I once had a doctor, pediatrician, told me he's leaving afterwards, he's going to Eretz Yisrael. So why are you going to Eretz Yisrael? He said his wife wants to go. Why does your wife want to go? Talk to her. He gives me the phone. Yeah, hello. She says, I don't like Golus. I said, Eretz Yisrael is still Golus now. Mashiach didn't come. She understands. But in Argentina, all the Jews had to run. In France, the Jews had to run. In Russia, the Jews ran away. Yeah. But in America, they're still there. So this is how she touched it up. When Mashiach comes, the Rebbeinu Shalom is going to take the big pot of all the Eden and slowly pour it into Eretz Yisrael. But when you pour a pot, a little soup, you pour a little. When it gets to the bottom, you turn the whole thing over and dump it in. The Rebbeinu Shalom is saving the biggest for the last. So I think the Rebbeinu Shalom is saving America all the way for at the end. To go boom, one shot. So I want to get out when they're still pouring slowly. You look around, and I have the schus of being by the different yeshivas and different schools. It doesn't make a difference. A kid here, a kid in Flappers, a kid in Barapak, all Yiddish, a kid in Lech, the same Torah, the same everything. We all come from Yerushalayim, and we're heading back in Yerushalayim. The only shaila is where we are in between. Gemara says, Rabbi Barbachana said, that once they built a big, beautiful city. It was gorgeous, it was sunny, it was nice, it was fresh. And one day the city started going, Azayin, I didn't know what happened. And then they realized that they built the city on a fish. And that the whole fish turned over. And the guy goes, the whole city, everybody's in the water. And the Vilna Gaon says, you know what it means? In Golus, wherever you build, you're building on a fish. It's only a matter of time for the whole fish turns over. And maybe we would come from respective Medinas Shel Chesed, and we definitely have to have a Hakaras HaTov and a gratitude to the countries that we live in and the respect in every single possible way. But as far as the Yid is concerned, let's face it, you're on a fish. And it's only a matter of time before the fish is going to turn over. For those that are going to read in the Kinnis tomorrow, for those who read today, you read the Kinnis about the Crusades. And you read about the terrible story of Rabbi where the Crusaders surrounded the entire city and the bishop promised to protect them and the Crusaders broke in and noshim, betaf, men, women and children were killed out. You know, somebody published a letter, an old letter that was found in Vermeizen. Vermeizen was there from Bayis Rishon, from the first base of Mikdash. And when the people started going back doing Bayis Sheni, they sent a letter to the people in Worms and Vermeizen, come with us. And somebody wrote back and said, you live in the big Yerushalayim, we live in the little Yerushalayim over here, we're very comfortable over here. On a fish is very, very comfortable. Until the fish turns over. Tatte, Kimahan. You know that in Germany, 60 years before the war, Kaiser Wilhelm, the king of Germany, came to the B'Sham Shuvol Hirsch's opening day of the Besmedrash, and they opened up the Aron HaKodesh L'chvoidai. And he stood there and gracefully took a bow to the Sifrei Torah. We're here forever. Who would have imagined what would happen 60 years later? It's very important not to forget who our father is. That we come from Yerushalayim and we are going to Yerushalayim. Bluzhevet Rebbe had one daughter, one biological daughter, Einikol and his son-in-law, and he got passports for them to be able to leave Europe. At least they had a chance. And then there was a bombing raid, and his Adam was hurt in the bombing raid. And his daughter stood there by the hospital trying to get in. And a German officer came by and said, Frau so-and-so, you want to get in? Come, I'll take you around the pass. And she got into the car with him. And she was never, ever heard of again. It's the Rebbe's Bas Yechida. A while later, the Einikol was taken away and disappeared. So now the Rebbe was all alone in this world. And a man came walking up and said to the Rebbe, but you have a passport for another boy. Take my son. Who's your son? And he turned around and he gave his son a kiss on the forehead and said, from now and on, he is your father. And the Rebbe said, what? And he walked away. And the little boy looked at him. So now you're my father? The Rebbe said, that kiss, I'll never forget, that the father gave to the son. This little boy was together with the Rebbe in Bergen-Belsen, together in different camps. He learned with him. Once a Nazi stopped him, bent down, took out a lollipop and smiled at the little kid and said, tell me the truth. Who is this man? And the Rebbe started saying, Hashamdi Bagadni. And the little boy looked up and said, this is my father. He saw his father one more time after the war. The father hid in a bunker, but was sick from pneumonia, from different sicknesses. He died right after the war. But the Rebbe married him off someplace in London, and when he had his first son, he asked the Rebbe to come to be a sandik. He came to London to be the sandik. He sat down and he held the baby, and right afterwards he got up to leave, tears streaming from his eyes. And the people in London asked the Rebbe, maybe he could stay for a week, stay over Shabbos. He says no. He wants to leave with the impression of this baby and this child in front of him. Because this is his amunah, that there's a hashgacha in Doiros. And he left London on that very day. Oi, Rebbeinu Shalayla. Tatte, Kimahain. You said today one of the Sarah Ruge Malchus, or going to say Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava stood between two huge mountains and he gave smicha to Rabbi Meir, to Rabbi Yehuda, to Rabbi Yossi, to Rabbi Shimon. And he said, the Romans are coming. They said, the Rebbe, let's run. He said, you run. And he stood there between the two mountains and the Romans came. He didn't budge. They pierced him and killed him. Maybe he gave them a split second to escape. A split second. Why did he do it for? He did it to should be hamshacha of Torah. For you and for me. A lady, Mrs. Shapiro, Bluzhevet Rebbe's second Rebbitzin, is riding with one of her sons. She's dressed like an Aryan woman. And a bunch of German soldiers are sitting around her. If the child wakes up and speaks Yiddish, her life is over. And a bunch of German soldiers are talking. She says to them in German, you don't want to wake up a future German soldier. Oh, we're sorry. Shh. And then they're so nice to her. Where are you getting off? All they need, they should help her off, and the kids should start talking and screaming. So she said, I'm getting off the next station. And when the train pulled into the station, she said, oh, I'm over here. She grabbed the baby and ran off. Then she found papers for her husband. She said to her husband, come with her other child, another child, Tzvi. And her husband said, I can't leave my mother. But I can't leave my mother. Will you be Michael me? And thank you for all the good years we had together. When he was on the train to Auschwitz, ripped open the bar, just a drop, enough to be able to stip the baby out of a moving train. How much courage does it take to take a baby and throw the baby out of a moving train? It's the only chance of survival. And the last thing he said, Tzviela, Zeis der Große Himmel, you see this big scar, you know why Hashem made it? To look down at Yiddish kinder. The mother had a sense that the father would do it. She hired a Polish peasant to walk up and down the tracks. Officially, he was picking mushrooms. And suddenly he saw a pair of shoes connected to legs. The child was more dead than alive. He brought the child home. She put the child in a hospital. The next day she had a sense that she better run away from here. And they grabbed the child and they took the child away, and she took the child away. She survived. She survived with both of her children. I'm staying by a wonderful, wonderful host over here, Rabbi Yosef Chaim Holzer and his Rebbetzin, and I want to tell you an amazing story that he told me about his father. Father came to here on Australia on a boat. They needed kosher food. They were in the F class, the worst possible class. They came as a government grant. 6-week boat ride, not a 16-hour plane ride. And they snuck it. They paid money to go into the kitchen at 11 o'clock to be able to cook food. Kasha the pots and cook food. Then a bunch of non-religious Jews found out about it, and they bought out the kitchen from them. They said, we'll do the cooking. We know how to cook also. And his father snuck in at night, and they went looking into huge chunks of salt and dropped it in. And when they started bringing their food to the captain or whoever, they said, you don't know how to cook, give it back to the first person. And you come here, this is a Yid that went through the war, that came to a country, doesn't speak a word of English, doesn't have where to go, they're housed in some kind of a tract, that's where there is, nothing to do, no place to go. And they realize they're not very happy with the mikveh. They're not 100% happy with the mikveh. And what does this Yid do? Goes to someone's backyard and gets a bunch of people together. There's a Yidden that just went through years and years of pain and horror, she'ein kamayah, that have every reason to question, is there a Bayri Olam on the world? They answered if there's a Bayri Olam on the world. They get on their hands and feet and start digging a hole for a mikveh. You had a shovel. If not, the Baruch Hashem gave you 10 little shovels. And they dug out the hole. And then because one of them, the Germans, forced him to pour cement on roads as slave labor, he said, Gewaldig, I know why the Germans told me to do it. And he pours the cement down on the floor. And after 2 months, the mikveh is ready. And the mikveh is used for the next 2 years. So I ask you, is there a Bayri Kol Olamim? The Germans are laughing. Jew, pour the concrete, pour the concrete. Does he know, did this German know he's building a mikveh now? He's not just building a mikveh. He's building the next generation of Klal Yisrael. I guarantee you, anyone sitting in this hall, anyone sitting in that Beis Medrash, that somewhere along the lines, your Baba, your Zay, they got on their hands and feet and dug a mikveh. If not in this way, in some other way. V'haraya, you're here. Could have never happened. Could have never happened if you were not here. I know you've heard the story many times, but I'm going to share it with you because I didn't read it in a book. But I heard it from a few people this morning who said it happened to their father. That they ran away from Germany to England during the war, and the British decided that all German Jews are spies. And they put them on a boat and they told them they're going to Canada. But apparently there was a deprogramming in their GPS system, because instead of going up north to Canada, they came south to Australia. And as they're on this boat, the British soldiers were not nice to them. In order to taunt them extra, they took their last suitcases. That's my last suitcase. I don't want anything else in my life. Those are my last pictures of my parents, of anything I have. Really? Whee! Overboard. Just for the fun of it. And they arrived at the shores of Australia, and they were put into camps until they were released. It wasn't until 20, 30 years later, they heard the rest of the story, that German submarines, German U-boats were following these boats, and they were getting ready to blow them up, when suddenly they read this on the diary of the captain of the U-boat, that they're throwing things over the water, let's check it out. And they opened it up. And they saw German writing. It was too faded to see that the writing was a Chuvas of the Kivega. But they saw someone writing German. They said there must be German prisoners. And you know what the captain said? Can't blow up this boat. Not only can we not blow up this boat, we have to follow the boat and make sure no other German submarine blows up the boat. So they followed the boat, the Germans followed the boat all the way almost to Australia, sending off any other German submarine. No, 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 no. And when they got off over here, and they turned around, and the boat started coming back, then they blew up the boats. And since geblieben von der Schiff, there was nothing left of that boat. Not one Soviet, not one Poland. And I know you've heard the story. But when you say to someone, my father was on the boat, I'm here because of that story. And that first Shabbos in the camp, they wrote out a Haggadah Shel Pesach by hand, by memory, and here is a copy of it. And they were saying to themselves, what does the Rabbi Shalom want from us? What does the Rabbi Shalom want from us? This is what they wrote. Out of memory, this is what they did to Seder. We ran away to England, you send us to Australia, they threw, look at the Rabbi Shalom, is such a achzer, he threw our suitcases out. Little did they know what those suitcases were. That those suitcases were saving their life. And one Yid sits down by the Seder and says, I don't know why, but I'm telling you, if the Rabbi Shalom did this to us, this is good for us. Our last pictures of our parents, every last penny, every drop of clothes, we're in a camp, and you're writing the Haggadah Shel Pesach by hand, by memory, and you're saying the Rabbi Shalom protected us? Yeah. The Rabbi Shalom arranged that the German boats should protect them in both ways. Do we have this emunah? When we lose a suitcase, when things don't go our way, the Heishiv Leiv Avos Albanim, Leiv Banim Alavoisa. I'm going to finish off, but I want you to think for one moment. For your father's sake, for that grandfather, that's the reason you're a Shomer Torah Mitzvahs. Make a decision in your life that your life is going to change, that your life is going to be different. Make that decision. Ignak, I told you last night, is walking, and he's on the death marches, and he makes it to Madhouse and doesn't think he's going to live, and he has a dream, and in his dream he sees his grandfather, the Dalner Rebbe, and he sees his grandmother sitting down by Shalashudis, and says, Ignak, listen to me. If you're going to eat Shalashudis, you're going to be saved. And he wakes up, and he takes his one piece of bread that he has for the week, and every day he takes off one crumb, another crumb, saves up 6 crumbs. He was so hungry, he wanted so badly to eat those crumbs, and comes Shalashudis, he sits down in the corner and eats his Heilige Shalashudis. Ignak was one of the few people that survived Mauthausen. You think right now, as you're sitting here, you don't have a Baba and a Zayda that ate Shalashudis 1 generation ago, 15 generations ago, 30 generations ago. That's the reason you're here. Stop a second and say to myself, Baba Zayda, your work was not in vain. I'm committing myself. We have no idea to how the din of the Rabban Shalom works. Just finish off one last thing. You read today in the Kinnis, or you're going to read tomorrow, Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha was one of the Sarah Ruge Malchus. His face was so beautiful. And the daughter of the Roman governor says, don't kill him, his face is so beautiful. Oh, you want his face? They went and they flipped and cut out his face with the scissor and preserved it. Only when they came to the Makkah Matfilim did he begin to cry. Steht in the Arizal that Rabbi Shmuel Kohen Gadol was a Gilgal of Yosef HaTzadik. So he had the beautiful face. And this daughter of the governor was Eishes Patifa. And as much as Yosef HaTzadik was careful not to look, by mistake, once he caught a glance. No tainas on Yosef. But Yosef said, please let me come down to this world to be masakin it. And he came down to this world as Yishmael Kohen Gadol. So you should be able to have the tikkun. Do you think when you bump your finger, you think when something happens in your life, there's not a cheshbon that's tied to 1,000 generations beforehand? The Rabbi Shalom knows we're human beings. The Rabbi Shalom wants us to try. And I beg of you, let's be machaber, the bottom of the globe and the top of the globe. Let's all say in our hearts, Tatte, Kimahim.